There is a photograph of Vivien Leigh taken in 1960. She is sitting in a garden. Her posture is correct. Her expression is composed in the way that a person composes themselves when they have learned, over many years, that composure is the only currency the world will accept from them without argument. She looks like a woman at rest. She was not at rest. She was 57 days out of her most recent hospitalization. The electroconvulsive treatments had been administered again. Her memory, which had always been one of the instruments she relied on most, the lines, the characters, the precise emotional architecture of a scene, was blurred at its edges in ways she could not fully account for and was not encouraged to discuss. And the man sitting just outside the frame of that photograph had already begun the process of leaving. Not loudly, not with the dramatic confrontation that the magnitude of what was happening perhaps deserved. Quietly, incrementally, the way water moves through a foundation, invisibly, until the structure above it begins to shift in ways that can no longer be explained away. Laurence Olivier had already fallen in love with Joan Plowright. Vivien Leigh had 7 years left to live. She did not know that yet if this kind of story pulls you in, the kind that feels almost unbelievable until you realize it isn't, then you'll want to stay close to this channel. We are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of this month, and the people who subscribe early are the ones who end up shaping what this becomes. And one more thing, don't just watch this silently. Tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city or your country in the comments. I read them, and it's the only way I get to see who's really on the other side of the screen. She did not drift toward life. From the beginning, she fixed on things with a concentration that the people around her found either magnetic or unsettling, depending entirely on how much her focus was directed at them. Born in Darjeeling in 1913, daughter of a British exchange broker and a mother with French and Irish ancestry, Vivien Leigh hardly grew up between continents. Educated in convent schools across Europe, fluent in French by adolescence, trained in music and dance before she had decided what she actually wanted to be. What she wanted, she understood early, was to act. This was not a passive wish. It was a decision made with the same quiet certainty with which she made most decisions, fully, and without leaving herself a route back. She enrolled at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art at 17. She was married at 19 to a barrister named Lee Holman and had a daughter, Suzanne, at 20. By 22, she had appeared in her first film. By 23, she had seen Laurence Olivier on stage in Romeo and Juliet and written in her diary, with a directness that would come to define her. That is the man I am going to marry. He was already married. She was already married. She proceeded anyway. Behind the extraordinary face. And it was extraordinary, the kind of face that made camera operators stop and simply stare at their equipment afterward as though checking it had recorded something real. There was a discipline that most people who met her socially never saw, and many who worked with her underestimated until it was too late. She memorized faster than almost any actor of her generation. She prepared with a rigor that Olivier himself, who was nothing if not rigorous, acknowledged in his autobiography with the specific reluctance of a man crediting something he would have preferred to claim for himself. She was not a beautiful woman who learned to act. She was an actor who happened to be beautiful, and the distinction would follow her, and eventually destroy her, for the rest of her career. In 1939, David O. Selznick cast Vivien Leigh as Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind after a search so prolonged and publicized it had become its own cultural event. She had pursued the role with a determination she later described simply as knowing. She flew to Los Angeles as a relative unknown to a Hollywood that was not looking for her, and she left 16 months later with an Academy Award. The film made her one of the most famous women on Earth. It also locked her inside a category from which she would spend the rest of her life trying to escape. Scarlett O'Hara was a specific kind of woman. All surface combustion, all drama and impulse and devastating beauty. The world received Vivien Leigh as an extension of that character rather than as the actor who had constructed her. She was the phenomenon. She was the face. She was the spectacle. Olivier, by this point her husband and professional partner, was the artist. This was the understanding, rarely stated explicitly, never examined publicly, simply assumed by the theatrical and critical establishment they both inhabited. He was the one whose craft was discussed in terms of architecture and intention. She was the one whose performances were described in terms of incandescence. He built. She radiated. The distinction sounds like a compliment to both. It was not equally distributed in its consequences. She won 2 Academy Awards to his 1. She sold more tickets. Her name drew larger audiences, and she remained throughout consistently framed as the secondary figure in a partnership that the evidence of her actual output did not support. She knew it. She did not say it often, because a woman who names that particular dynamic in 1950s British theater is not called perceptive. She is called difficult. Before she fully understood how much damage that word would do, before the illness made it a weapon that others could reach for without consequence, she had already altered the history of two separate art forms in two separate countries, on two separate continents, before the age of 40. Then the illness entered, and nothing that followed was ever examined with the honesty it deserved. What happened to Vivien Leigh's mind is documented. The manic episodes began in the 1940s, becoming more severe and more frequent through the 1950s. The condition would today be identified and treated with a clarity and consistency that was simply not available to her. In 1953, she had a breakdown during the filming of Elephant Walk, so severe that she had to be removed from the production and flown home to England. In 1961, she was hospitalized again. The treatments administered included electroconvulsive therapy, repeated across multiple episodes over multiple years. The stated purpose was therapeutic. The justification was medical necessity. The practical outcome was a woman returned to the world after each course of treatment with her memory partially disrupted, her effect flattened, and her extraordinary instrument. The mind that had memorized Shakespeare and Chekhov and Tennessee Williams and held entire productions together through the precision of her preparation, blunted in ways that frightened her, and that she was given almost no space to grieve. What people said, instead of examining any of this, was that she was unstable. It is worth stopping on that word, because once a woman is described as unstable, the reclassification is total. Her anger becomes instability. Her grief becomes instability. Her fear about what the treatments are doing to her memory becomes instability. Her entirely rational response to a marriage that is dissolving while she is at her most vulnerable, that too becomes instability. The label did something else. It gave the people around her permission to make decisions about her life with a confidence that her protests could not disturb. If she objected to a treatment, the objection was itself evidence of the condition. If she expressed fury at what was happening to her career, to her marriage, to her sense of continuous selfhood, the fury was the illness speaking, not Vivien Leigh. She was in the room. She was not consulted. Olivier had power of attorney during certain periods of her illness. The decisions were made. The treatments were administered. And afterward, she was expected to be grateful for the help she had been given. She was not always grateful. And the fact that she was not always grateful was added to the record. By 1960, Laurence Olivier had been working closely with Joan Plowright for 2 years. Plowright was 20 years younger than Vivien, a serious stage actress associated with the rising new wave of British theater that was deliberately positioning itself against everything that the old, glamorous, star-driven theatrical establishment represented. Everything, that is, that Vivien Leigh represented. Olivier began the affair. He did not tell Vivien directly or promptly. He did not arrange his departure with the consideration that 20 years of marriage and the particular vulnerability of her current circumstances might have called for. He continued to be present in the house, in the marriage, in the public narrative of their partnership, while building a separate life toward which he was moving with increasing purpose. She found out the way people usually find out about things they have already sensed but refuse to fully assemble, through an accumulation of details that eventually reached a mass the mind could no longer explain away. In 1960, Olivier asked for a divorce. She was in the middle of a manic episode. This is documented. This is not contested. The timing was what it was. She agreed to the divorce. She had no practical mechanism to refuse it and no institutional protection that would have made refusal meaningful. What she had was her name, her career, the income from her own work, and the complete devastation of understanding that the person who had held power of attorney over her life during her most vulnerable periods had been, during some of those same periods, in love with someone else. He married Joan Plowright in 1961. He was later knighted, made a lord, appointed the first director of the National Theatre. His reputation ascended through the 1960s on an arc that the culture treated as unambiguously deserved. Her reputation was reassessed. Not cruelly, exactly. More quietly. She became the cautionary figure. The beautiful one who had not been able to hold herself together. The great film actress of an earlier era, before the illness, before the instability. Before. as though the illness were a verdict on everything that came after it. As though the woman who had made Blanche Du Bois into one of the most devastating performances in the history of the English-speaking stage, which she did in 1949, which the critics described as almost unbearable in its precision, had been diminished by what happened to her health. As though what happened to her health were her fault. As though fault were the relevant category at all. They kept trying to make her manageable. They kept trying to make her quiet. After the divorce, Vivien Leigh did not disappear. She toured. She recorded. She appeared on Broadway in Tavares in 1963 and won the Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical. Not as a legacy honor, not as a consolation offered to a fading star, but because she was, at the age of 50, still one of the most compelling performers working in the English language. The reviews were not kind reviews. They were serious reviews. The kind written for actors whose work demands to be engaged with rather than merely celebrated. She continued to take work. She continued to prepare with the same rigor that had always been her baseline. She continued to be the person who arrived knowing every line, having read every secondary source, having made every decision about her character before she walked into the first rehearsal. The person who could hold a scene together by sheer force of attention while the people around her were still finding their footing. She was 53 years old and had been through things that would have ended most careers at 30. She was still there. In 1967, she was diagnosed with tuberculosis. The disease had been present, it turned out, for some time before the diagnosis, present and undetected during years when its effects on her energy and stamina had likely been attributed to other causes, other explanations, other things that were easier to say about a woman whose mental health was already on the record. She died on July 7, 1967. She was 53 years old. She was found by her housekeeper in the early morning in her London flat. She had been alone. Olivier, who had by this point been with Joan Plowright for 7 years and knighted by the crown, was informed. He was reported by those present to have wept. He had her buried with the restraint and dignity befitting a former wife. Now return to the photograph from 1960. She is sitting in the garden. Her posture is correct. Her composure is intact. And now you know what the composure was made of. Not peace, not acceptance, not the graceful resignation that the image wants you to read into her expression, but sheer, disciplined, unbroken will. A woman who had already been hospitalized, treated against the full understanding of what was being done to her, whose marriage was ending in real time while the world watched them play the grand couple, who had won 2 Academy Awards and a Tony and still occupied the secondary position in a partnership the evidence did not justify, sitting in a garden, in the English summer light, holding herself together. Not because she had been broken, because she had decided, as she had always decided, to continue. She did not choose the illness. She did not choose the treatments. She did not choose to have the man with power of attorney over her most vulnerable years building a new life towards someone else while she was inside those years, unable to fully protect herself. What she chose every morning that she continued to work, every stage she continued to walk onto, every performance she gave after everything that had been done to her and taken from her, was to remain entirely, unmistakably herself. The most generous reading of Laurence Olivier is that he was a man who loved her and could not manage what the illness required of him, and who made choices in that failure that he likely understood were wrong even as he made them. The accurate reading is that a woman of extraordinary talent and documented courage was failed. By her medicine, by her marriage, by the vocabulary her era used to classify and dismiss her, at the moments when she most needed to be protected. Vivien Leigh, November 5, 1913. July 7, 1967. The Tony Award she won in 1963 was collected by a woman who had already been discarded by the institution that claimed to have loved her most. She collected it herself. She was not there to be remembered properly. She has been remembered anyway. She was not there to be remembered properly. But you were here. You stayed. You now know the version that the photograph was trying to hide. That is what this channel is built for. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with one person who you think should know this story. Every share is another person who stops seeing the myth and starts seeing the person. We will be back with the next name that history got wrong.